All right.
Yay!
Yeah.
Welcome back,
Oh, God.
moviegoers.
I can't.
Welcome to installment number
3?
3.
Yes, it's
us
number
going
3,
through
yes.
the 50. Was it best, most influential, must-see sci-fi movies?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's basically most influential or most iconic is kind of what the list is going
iconic
for.
is probably right.
Or like the most foundational, like
You gotta see it.
when you look at like for Frankenstein, like the mad scientist, like that's a huge trope, right? But it came from somewhere. It came from this. Maybe it didn't even come from it originally because like there's a cave drawing from 55 whatever million years ago, but it popularized it enough that like when you see it in other media, like that's what it's referencing.
Yeah,
I think that's what it means.
I suppose you're right.
Anyway, so yeah, we saw Frankenstein
So we did.
in 1931. Do you want to talk about the book?
Yeah.
first?
So let me. So I read the book. You didn't read the book.
Maybe we should explain that it's based on a book.
Sure.
I
Whatever.
don't know, maybe
All right.
someone doesn't know.
Fine. So, as with a lot of movies, this movie is based on a book. And so I think that entire saga of like the book being published and, the story of its author is very fascinating. Won't spend too much time on it. But basically, it's also reported as, or, it's talked about as like the first sci-fi book.
Yeah,
So that's kind of relevant to what we're talking about.
I say so. Yeah.
I do say so. So the book was published 100 years before this movie came out, kind of.
Yeah.
More than 100. And it was published by Mary Shelley. So, I mean, that's interesting in itself, right? It's like a woman publishing this book.
And she was like 20.
She was like 20 when it
Yeah.
first came out.
Yeah.
So, that entire saga is pretty fascinating. But the story goes that Mary Shelley, the daughter of Mary Wollstonecraft,
Mm-hmm.
popular feminist, was, I don't know, what's the word here? Frolicking with her companions. And so Lord Byron, like a famous poet of the time, said, hey guys, let's have a competition and see who can write like the best horror story. And so at this time, apparently it was called The Year Without a Summer because there was a giant volcanic explosion in Indonesia,
Oh,
which like messed with the temperature of the entire world.
what?
Yeah, so it wasn't like as sunny and stuff, and so it was like darker and stormier, which maybe was the
What the hell?
background, which precipitated
I
all
didn't
this.
know
In
that.
any case, yeah. So Mary Shelley's 16-year-old self came up with this story of Frankenstein, which that's
Yeah,
16
that's
is
nuts.
like you're in like 10th, 11th grade,
Yeah.
which I don't know. It's pretty wild.
They had a little competition and she whips out like this 200-page horror story or whatever.
Well, yeah, I mean, she worked on it afterwards and eventually
Yeah,
got it published. But the other thing to come from this, Lord Byron, his story was called like a fragment, and I don't think he wrote like the entire thing, but he talked about the story with his physician, and that's how the physician ended up writing the novel The Vampire. So
Is that a famous book?
I think it's kind of like the start of like the
Oh, start of-
sophisticated vampire.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Like predates like,
like
but
the sophisticated vampire who's like in society, I think.
what is that, Nosferatu?
That movie came out in like 19
No, but
whatever.
the book that it's
That
based
book,
on?
I don't know.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay, I don't know.
but, this a specific
Dracula.
kind of vampire. So, anyways, she wrote this, and then I think she didn't get royalties from it.
Yeah.
And so this book, actually, the one that I got, it's the 1818 edition, which is like the original.
Oh.
And then she ended up sort of rewriting the book in 1831, changing things around a little bit. And so what happened was she writes this book, right?
Mhm.
And the book obviously shocked everybody of the time.
Mhm.
And then when it came out that it was a woman who wrote it, that was like even worse than, the subject matter for the people of the time. And so what had to happen on, the way that this forward is written by, who is this by? Charlotte Gordon. The way she writes it, it's like, because Mary Shelley didn't get royalties from this book, she didn't really have that much money. So in 1831, she republished this book and changed some things around to appeal more to like the standard of the time. So like in the 1818 version, Victor Frankenstein has a little bit more agency. He chooses to go ahead and, create this monster.
Mhm.
In the 1831 one, it's, a little bit more like a tempestuous, like he doesn't really have a choice.
The people weren't into agency
Well,
back then.
yeah, I mean, I guess it's more like, oh yeah, you know, a choice, or something like
He's
that.
not trying to be like a bad guy or something.
Right, something like that. Or yeah, just free will, I guess. I don't know.
Okay.
And the other thing was, in this book, Victor Frankenstein is married to his cousin, and
Why?
I don't know. It's how it was written.
Okay.
In the book, it's because Frankenstein's mother, I think, takes like this girl Elizabeth comes into her lives, and she's like, she's amazing and beautiful. These two will be married one day, and then the mom dies because she doesn't quarantine from scarlet fever.
No.
Yeah,
An
and
anti-vaxxer?
well, she just couldn't wait for the quarantine to be done, and so then in order to like honor their mother's wishes, they eventually get married.
Okay.
So then to appeal to like the more, I don't know, broader, I guess, they went ahead and changed it from cousins marrying each other to like adopted person. You know, they happen to get married. So a lot of changes.
It's weird to me that she decided to do that, but then also it was off-putting to people at the time. You know what I mean? Like you think back then, and you're like, well, maybe it wasn't so weird, but clearly it was.
It was
If
weird to
people
I
didn't
think,
like it.
certain portion of
Society,
the society, yeah,
the non-incestuous portion of society.
indeed. And so I mean, so her mother. So I mean, it's wild what she went through, but basically her mother, popular feminist, you know, was pretty widely regarded. Died 10 days after giving birth to her.
Yeah.
After she died, Mary Shelley's father, he ended up publishing like a tell-all about all of his like wife's sexual exploits as well,
What?
which basically made society like just completely disregard her. And it wasn't until like the 1970s that her, you know, stuff kind of became popular again. This is why we know her name.
Why would he do that?
But he respected her. He liked her, but yeah, I don't know. So, I mean, Mary Shelley's upbringing, everything wild. And
Yeah.
you can kind of see, you know,
All right.
I don't know.
Did she die penniless? Like,
no,
right?
She ended up, I think, what was it? There's like a whole section on Wikipedia. It's like she traveled with her son.
I know her husband died, like, not like real young, but kind of young.
Yeah, her husband. I mean, again, it just, it's crazy because the story hinges on relationships a lot, but then her life also is similar. So it's hard for me to kind of like separate the two sometimes. But the person that she ended up marrying when she was 16 and went frolicking with Lord Byron was a guy named, I think, Percy Shelley. Percy at the time was 21, so 5 years older, and already married.
And also married, yeah.
And it wasn't until later that Percy's wife committed suicide.
Oh.
That Percy and then Mary Shelley got married. And then Percy died in a boating accident when he was 29.
Oh.
Like, and then Mary Shelley would have been like, what, like 25 or something? To think of like this life.
That's pretty
insane. So even just the background of the book is, I think, something to write home about. And then, yeah, the 1831 adaptation or republishing is the one that most of the stories, everything is kind of based on going forward. Some characters' names are changed. There's no cousin marrying, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
And then, yeah, she died in 1853 or something. She died of a brain tumor.
Oh, right.
Guessing. So, and then just let me just say about the book then. So the way the book basically is phrased, just real quick, is it's kind of a story within a story. So the book is framed as there's an Arctic explorer writing letters to his sister back home. And so in the letters, he says, hey, I came across this guy, Victor Frankenstein, and he regaled me with this tale. And then he writes down word for word what Frankenstein told him in this letter. And then, you know, Frankenstein's like, hey, man, I did this crazy thing. And then in that story, Victor Frankenstein speaks with his monster. And then his monster tells him his entire life story. So then the sister of this Arctic explorer is reading these letters from her brother, who is writing down the story of Victor Frankenstein. And in that story, Victor Frankenstein is basically retelling the story that the monster tells him.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's pretty, everybody gets a say, everybody's, you know, kind of voice is heard. But that's kind of the way that this
But the monster can talk?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, the monster can talk. My God. So we can talk about the movie first, but yeah, there's a lot of differences that, you know, I think change the movie from the book. All right. That all out of the way.
Okay. Let's treat this less like a book report.
It's like 10 minutes. It's fun.
Oh, okay. I'm glad. I'm good. I'm glad you had.
I think the ways that I would unfavorably compare the movie with the book are the reasons why I like good sci-fi, which become more apparent later
Okay.
in, sci-fi, like, 80s, 90s.
Okay. Do you want to get more specific or?
Just that the movie isn't as complex,
Oh,
character-wise as it could be.
okay.
And nowadays, what I like about sci-fi is it tackles things,
But is it
good
really?
sci-fi.
But it's not the characters that makes it sci-fi. You know what I mean?
No, but
That's kind of like.
it's characters dealing with these sort of extraordinary problems.
Yeah. Okay.
But anyways,
Okay.
now we got a movie.
Yeah.
We got a picture on our hands.
So let's get to the movie.
Yeah. The year 1931. The name of I actually don't know where it was filmed.
California. I don't know.
Sure.
I don't know. It's set in like a generic European kind of town.
Yeah.
It's like Germany, but
Switzerland, Germany,
something. Yeah.
Yeah.
They have Burgomeisters, wherever, one of those places.
Yeah. So the year that this was released, so Universal Pictures was like crazy in debt.
Mhm.
And Dracula actually had come out and done pretty well. It made like 700,000, some crazy amount of money.
It made $50. Holy.
Yeah. So we're all losing its mind, and Universal was like, "All right, this is good. Let's keep this going." And so then they decided to make Frankenstein. They changed directors a little bit, but at the end of the day, I mean, movie got made, movie did well.
Yeah, it's funny that like studios even back then were like, people like this horror stuff. What else do you got? Like just find something else because what was Dracula, right? They did well,
very well.
Yeah, so Dracula did really well, and like people like to be scared, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
You got anything else scary? And I guess I don't know how they exactly came upon it, but it was they adapted the book to a play, and then they bought the rights to that play adaptation and changed it to a movie.
Yeah, so I mean, at least for Frankenstein, there was a play that came out in 1823 that apparently Mary Shelley saw, which is
a play came out in 1823.
Mm-hmm.
That's like 5 years after the book.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that happened. It's actually where Fritz, the character, came from.
Yeah.
So
okay.
And then they adapted that. So interesting. Right. But unlike with whatever it was, A Trip to the Moon and all these things,
mm-hmm.
right? It doesn't feel like when we watch the movie, it doesn't feel like we're just watching a play, but recorded. So I think the movie, starts off pretty well with good exposition dumps. I think done pretty well.
Well, it starts off with an old guy coming out, breaking the fourth wall and saying, "Hey, if you're a nervous Nelly, don't watch this movie because it's pretty crazy."
Yeah. I'm so happy that this movie is a talkie.
Oh, right. Yeah. It's the first movie it's the third movie, but the other two were...
Of the movies that we've seen, correct.
Yeah,
it's the
other
first.
Ones are silent. And this one's a talkie.
And it changes completely, like the entire feel, the flow of the movie. Because you don't have to like wait for these cards to, see motivations.
It has now reached the like modern age, I feel like, which it's pretty fast, I guess. But like
30 years.
It is now like, oh, that's a movie. Mm-hmm. It's like an hour and 10 minutes long. There's like zooms and camera movement and different angles and close-ups and
people are talking
sound
and everything. And I mean, there's no like CGI and there's no color, but whatever. You can compare this 1-to-1 with like a 1990s version of this movie, as opposed to like A Trip to the Moon or even Metropolis. Like, it's not an apples to apples comparison.
Yeah, it's still important to know the context and stuff that it was released in, but you can still judge it much more like you can just sit next to each other like, hey, they're both movies,
Yeah.
So what's your like initial impression of the movie? You know what I mean? Like what is like your just overall first, like what did you think about it? Did you like the movie? Did you enjoy the film?
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot more than, it was a lot less of me going like that, which is what the earlier two were like, and more of me. Just being able to appreciate, there's a story, there's, motive.
Like, does it hold up?
I think so. I think
if you weren't doing this, like, should you watch it? Probably not, right?
No,
like, unless you're like actually interested in the...
Which I imagine most people here would be.
Both of them will be.
Yeah.
But like if you're interested in what we're doing, I guess it's interesting to see, but it doesn't hold up as like a entertaining current movie. You know what I mean?
Maybe.
Which is a tough ask, but I'm gonna keep asking it until we're gonna get there one day.
Yeah.
And one of these, like, it's gonna hit that level where like it does hold up.
But it's not boring. Like we got 50 minutes out of this 70-minute movie, and we thought it had only been like 30. I mean, it goes fast,
No,
right?
it's not boring.
That's a testament to that. It's entertaining. It's not what? It's not like
it's dated, but I can see that it's well done. I guess you know what I mean.
Yeah, but it's so much more well done than what we've seen before.
Oh yeah,
in certain ways. So I mean, look, I watched this movie and I watched it after reading the book. So just based on that, right? Even if you're back then, you've probably read the book before you see this movie. The movie is very simplified, and you know, compared to the book, I feel like there's a lot lost. So from that point, I'm like, all right, the movie adds some stuff. You know, it makes it a little bit more action packed, a little bit more tense. But you know, I can see why people would have loved it back then.
Yeah,
especially given, you know, what else they had in terms of like entertainment. But
like a cut to like Cracker Jack or whatever those, like you.
Yeah,
you know what I'm talking about, like,
well, whatever,
or like that hoop with the stick that you just
right,
push.
like stick ball, whatever it is, right? But I guess they had like boxing matches, right? But
oh yeah, well,
I guess, but yeah, compared to everything else of the day, movie wise, I think this is amazing, fantastic.
Yeah,
I think it introduced much more complexity, like emotional complexity, compared to earlier movies, which is fantastic. But if you're looking at it as someone, you know, from 2022 watching this movie, it's going to feel simple and silly and kind of basic.
It holds up a lot better than like a 90-year-old movie I would have imagined would have. I was expecting to be like, I don't know, worse is the right word,
slower.
but like yeah,
and it's not, which is amazing. So
I mean, that's cool. I mean, this is why you watch them, right?
Right.
So like Frankenstein is often said to be like the first sci-fi novel, right? And then this is obviously in the science fiction collection of films. Would you categorize this as science fiction?
I finally would, yeah, because in the book, he talks about it as...
Because like on the surface, you're like Frankenstein, like that's not science fiction. Like not really. Like that's not the first thing you think of, right? You think of like Dracula.
I mean, it's just the way that it was written, right? So in the book, it's actually really funny. Basically, what happens is Victor Frankenstein happens upon this book by like an alchemist, right? And so he shows it to his dad, and his dad's like, "This is garbage," and his dad just kind of like, you know, goes away. And there's an entire little section devoted to it where Frankenstein says, "You know, if my dad wasn't so dismissive and he had explained to me why this was stupid, I probably would have stopped and I would have studied like chemistry or something." But he goes like full hog into like alchemy. Eventually, he gets into college. And so his college professors are like, "Hey man, so where are you at? Like, what do you know?" And he tells him like, "So I've been studying the works of Agrippa and Paracelsus and all these like hacks." And let me see here. There's a really good quote. So there's a really good quote. It's something like to the effect of, "In what desert have you lived?" Like they make so much fun of him. Like, my God, they're astonished by the fact that he has filled his mind with like complete nonsense. Like, okay, you gotta, okay, like it's so funny. And so what happens in the book is he meets one professor who's a little bit more sympathetic to like these alchemists basically. He's like, they've got a point, but you can learn something from all these different fields, even math. It's in there. And then Victor, right, goes and learns everything, right? He's a super scientist. And they mentioned in the movie too that he like excelled in all these fields. And eventually, I don't remember what it was. He was in like a graveyard or something, and he's looking like a worm, like eating something and then like continuing to live or something. He's like, and in that moment, he had like some epiphany, which is like, oh my God, I can create life. And it doesn't go into exactly quite how, but
okay, so it is.
So there is science.
It's very much science based,
right?
Which maybe is like obviously not in the details because you can't, but
you can't explain the black box. But for finally, there is
science caused a thing that makes the story.
He used science to create this fiction.
It's just weird that you think of it as like a monster grouped in with like these kind of like mythical monsters, like werewolves,
Yeah,
but
that's universal.
It's just because, it came out at the same time as those kinds of things. So I kind of read like what prompted these ideas like at the time, because apparently there was a Castle Frankenstein. Did you read about that?
Mm-hmm.
So they were in Germany, I think, when she wrote this, right? They were traveling Europe and then
Lake Geneva.
They went through, Switzerland.
Yeah.
They went through there's a Castle Frankenstein somewhere in Germany, I think, around there. And there was this, so that's true. And there may or may not have been some people said some crazy guy experimenting on stuff in there. But galvanism, which is like the kind of study of the motive force of the human body or animals, like electrophysiology, basically, like the super precursors of like from like 1790 of like electrophysiology. What happened was some guy like had frog legs and he like zapped him and they like kicked and he was like, whoa, like I've discovered the motive force of
it's I want to go back in time, just shake those people, because people will, I mean, look, I mean, it's like the foundation of like how science kind of starts, but all these people throughout history, right? They discover like one small thing and they're like, oh, the entire world works like this now. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, the motive force. Oh, that's how volcanoes must work. Like just they discover like one thing that they see, and like they have no idea about how complex science actually is, right? At least now, even now we don't know everything, but we have like such a good understanding of how complex it is. And back then they were like, oh, I made this frog leg move. I must be 3 years away from like immortality. It's wild. Or just shake them.
So apparently I have like a small tangent I want to go on, but apparently there was like a demonstration, not that she saw but I was just reading about galvanism, where someone did it with a dead body, like human body.
Sure.
Like but that's, I mean, you could imagine how nuts that would be, like to people back then.
It's just moving and they don't understand.
Put electricity into it and like the eyes like opened and like moved and stuff. Like,
I mean, I can see
so
how
like
it could be
that's kind of
shocking.
like where this is.
Yeah.
How is it done? It's done with lightning in the movie.
Is
that what it is?
There was, he's talking. There was like a kite and electricity and everything.
Okay.
I don't think the word galvanism was actually mentioned.
No, I mean, they won't say it, but like electricity and those kinds of ideas that you could reanimate the dead is like kind of literally from like you can shock a dead body and it'll move around, kind of. Anyway, my small sidebar tangent is that it's so funny. Like you kind of realize throughout history that people like the Spartans are really good at fighting, right?
Yeah.
Or like I was listening to that Dan Carlin thing. Those Huskarls, like they're really good at fighting. These scientists or whatever, like renowned scientists, and then like you kind of realize that what it means isn't that they were like so awesome. It's just that they actually practiced and tried. Whereas most people just kind of were most people were like amateurs at whatever they did, And the people that are like renowned in history are like just because they actually like were more professional about it. For example, like Ben Franklin's an amateur scientist, right?
Sure.
Like he did a lot of things, and then he kind of screwed around with like electrical stuff.
Yeah.
But he wasn't like a professional. He didn't spend all of his time doing that one thing. So you think of these like great scientists or great historical figures, or like Spartans, for example, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's probably not that they were like super awesome as they're portrayed now. I mean, they were, but it's because they literally just practiced and no one else practiced. You know what I mean?
It's about practice?
Yeah, it's about practice. But you know how nuts that is? It's not like they were super special forces. It's just like, oh yeah, let's like, let's practice a little beforehand.
Yeah.
Whereas everyone else, they were too busy farming because they couldn't practice and they just had to show up and like kind of figure it out.
Yeah.
Whatever. Anyway.
You're right.
Small sidebar, but.
And discoveries were all there for the picking because nothing had been looked at, it seems, ever. Yeah.
Anyway, what the hell were we talking about? Oh, if it is science fiction, yes. I mean, I get it.
Yeah, it's more science fiction than anything else. And
I get it now. Like,
I guess I'll say, like, with Metropolis, right? It was just a backdrop and then a prop. That was the science fiction elements. And this one, like, the themes of the movie and, like, the moral questions that are asked arise only because this science fiction...
like, of technology, basically.
It made it possible. Yeah. They made something up because of science, and they had to deal with the moral ramifications. More so in the book, but yeah.
Really, in the movie, there wasn't too much.
Not too much, no.
Right? It was just kind of like more like it was like a monster movie, really.
Right. Which how many of those were there? Well, I guess Dracula.
I don't know, but
yeah. But anyway, so I think this movie, right? It started off. There was talking. I was pleasantly surprised. That meant there was much less cacophony.
There was camera movement.
There was sure, but it was a much quieter film. The characters, by speaking, you're much more it's much more personal. It feels like you're not watching a play, you're watching people interact in real life. Like even if you're watching a play, right? It's this heightened, stylized thing. But if you're watching a movie, you feel a lot more. You're just kind of peering into this person's life.
Yeah. I want to talk about the story.
Sure.
Everyone knows the story, right? Well, the guy like is trying to reanimate a human body because he's, I don't know, that's the next big thing, his scientific breakthrough. Gathers corpses from around town, puts them together, and then uses electricity to like reanimate the body.
Yeah.
It's like kind of a monster man, and then it goes horribly wrong. He doesn't like it, and then it goes on a rampage, and then the townspeople all
band together and kill him.
Band together and kill it, basically. Yeah. That's the rough.
Yeah. It's
in a nutshell.
It's framed pretty well. It starts off with them at the gravesite trying to get a body, which that must have been shocking for some people. And then what he's doing is exposited by his, I think, his fiance, basically, where she says, this is what he's been working on. And then they go and see his professor from university. He's like, yeah, he's kind of gone off the deep end, trying to reanimate humans. And then his fiance just like, oh, okay, let's go see him.
Yeah.
And then on a dark, stormy night, right, they see him and they reanimate this body. And so one thing I hate this so much.
Oh, yeah.
And I can forgive them because it's the year 1931. I can't forgive it nowadays.
Yeah.
But, basically you have normal brain and a terrible brain.
Right. The professor's like in medical school giving a lecture, a hilarious lecture about how you can tell the difference between a common criminal's brain and a normal upstanding citizen's brain. Like by the way the gyri or whatever, like the shape of them or something.
Yeah.
Basically phrenology, but like even more whatever, right? Anyway, there's a brain labeled normal brain and a brain labeled abnormal brain. And Fritz, which is Igor, which I guess we'll get into that, but like the humpback assistant guy is like, all right, we'll take the good brain. Oh, I dropped it. We'll take the bad brain.
And it's like sitcom level.
It's like
misunderstanding.
Yeah.
And there's a scene where the guy who was giving that lecture, he talks to Frankenstein. He's like, yo, man, this guy's a monster. And Frankenstein says, no, he's not. He's got a perfectly normal brain. And then the doctor's like, no. That brain? No, you took the bad brain.
You took the criminal brain.
And then Frankenstein's just like, oh, whatever.
He's fine.
It's so funny. He says, I don't think I got it, but that was comedy.
Yeah.
And then another thing that happens just in that beginning is when he does reanimate him, he's like talking down to his college professor, like, you told me about the violet ray, talking about the ultraviolet ray. You didn't teach me about the other rays, and I discovered them.
I discovered an even more ray.
Yeah.
Ray.
Which I guess X-ray, gamma rays, or whatever. But
sure, but he didn't discover X-rays. He discovered like monster rays.
Yeah, which is another one of those like, hey, I discovered this really small, simple scientific discovery. If I just bump it up to 11, I can conquer the world.
And there's even more rays.
Yeah, and because of these rays, I can now, go to space. Like it's just, it'll solve every problem known to man.
I guess we should point out that, or like the It's Alive, Yeah, that's from this movie.
Yeah,
you can cut to it. But it's a very, very famous, iconic things from this movie.
Yeah, there's a lot of iconic, famous things.
Yeah, there are. So for me, the thing was, it was pretty good until it got to where Frankenstein got reanimated, or the monster got reanimated.
And
then it kind of got kind of goofy and like a little less focused after that, to me. Because like they reanimated this corpse, and then the scientist is like, I kind of don't like him anymore.
And just left.
And then his little like imp, like, winged monkey, like helper guy just was antagonizing him the whole time. Just shoving like a flaming torch into his face basically constantly. Even though he's told to stop multiple times, he's like, no. And so of course he goes nuts. Yeah. Or of course he gets mad and like breaks out and stuff. But it kind of felt like,
Frankenstein kills Fritz, and then he leaves Dr. Walden, I think it is, to stay with him.
He leaves the oldest, most frail guy to guard this monster, and he dies as well.
So he can go back and get married and just completely forgets about this. And basically, the only other things that happen is Frankenstein breaks out. He goes into a little lake. There's a little girl playing with flowers. He unintentionally murders her. I don't know if he expected her to die.
I don't think.
But they were throwing flowers into the lake. So he just picks up this girl and throws her into the lake, killing her.
Yeah.
And then, Frankenstein goes to the village where he's getting married. He ends up attacking the fiance Elizabeth, who does not die.
Right.
And then, they go after Frankenstein and they burn him. Frankenstein doesn't say a word during any of this.
The monster?
Yeah, the monster. Yeah, Frankenstein's monster. It doesn't say a word during any of this. And then, like you're saying, so at the end of it, nobody else dies. Frankenstein's monster is dead.
Mhm.
And
he throws Professor Frankenstein out of a window onto a windmill blade, by the way.
And he lives.
Almost assuredly destroying his back.
Yeah.
Most definitely destroying his future, at least, if not his vertebra.
And so, yeah, that happens. And then it's a happy ending, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. Like, the girl Maria dies, and that is very sad. But
it's a little weird. It's like this monster gets unleashed. They're like, let's kill it. And then they do. The ending wrap up, it's kind of goofy.
Yeah, it's everybody lives happily ever after, basically.
They don't really show. It's like he's in a. They don't even cut him.
He's not dead. He's not dead. Like
he's not dead. No, yeah, he's
everybody's
not dead.
happy. So I mean, you assume he's alive.
8 random women come down to visit the Professor Frankenstein or Dr. Frankenstein in his bed, and they're like, he needs some of Grandma's old wine, and then his great grandma, and his dad's like, I'll be taking that, and then it ends.
So
kind of random,
weird. I don't understand. I don't
know what I'm supposed to get out of that.
I think this is. I'm sure there were critics at the time complaining that this movie was appealing to the masses with its very crowd pleasing.
How does the book end?
So the book is so much more complicated. I guess it's more of like a tragedy
because he talks, right? The monster talks.
Not only does he talk, he's very intelligent.
Oh,
okay. So
why does everyone hate him?
Right, because he just looks weird.
Oh, that's messed up.
It is messed up. And so that's what I'm saying. This book is so much more complex. So you have Victor Frankenstein, right? Who filled his head with nonsense. And you know what? Whatever. He made this monster. Right. This monster is alive, comes alive. Frankenstein looks at the monster and he's like, oh my God, that's scary. Runs away. Just runs away.
Serious?
That's it. And he just runs away. And then he runs all the way back to like Switzerland, right? He was like, I don't remember where he was. Yeah, he just like forgets completely about the monster, goes away. And then eventually, some tragedies befall the people around him. He's like, is this the monster?
Oh.
Frankenstein's story is basically he makes this monster, he runs away. And then when he goes back home, he finds that his brother is murdered.
Mm-hmm.
And then, there's some bad things that befall him. And then Frankenstein shows up and talks to him. All right, so Frankenstein's monster. You know what? That they need to have given him a name,
dude. It's totally understandable, but
it is.
That's one of the greatest actually moments of all time. Is actually the name of the monster is not Frankenstein. That's the name of the scientist. It's actually Frankenstein's monster. There's a couple problems with it. One, he doesn't have a name, so what do you call him?
Yeah.
The name of the movie is Frankenstein. It's got a picture of a big Frankenstein on it. And then 2, because of the way German language is, Frankenstein sounds like a monster.
Yeah, Castle Wolfenstein, whatever.
Even though it's just a guy's name. It sounds like a monster anyway, so...
I'm going to call the monster Dave.
Whatever.
Dave is very inoffensive.
Sure.
Except to Daves everywhere, to whom I don't apologize. So Dave...
yeah.
Okay, so Dave, his story is that he woke up, he learned how to see...
like a sitcom or something, like Dave's story. It's like 3 of the same day, like hilarious misunderstandings. Anyway,
it kind of is. So then he wakes up and he's like, whoa, what's going on? And he doesn't really understand what's happening. He doesn't know language. He doesn't know anything. And basically he comes upon people, they flee and are scared and run away. He ends up subsisting on berries and stuff, living in basically a hut that's next to a little family of 3 people.
Okay.
He observes them for months and months, learns about their background, which is a whole thing. Thereby kind of learning language. He learns to read, and he's like, I'm going to go to these people. I am very learned now. The father is blind. I'm going to talk to him so I can prepare these people to see how terrible I look. And so then they will accept me into their family because, I'm a reasonable person.
Wow.
He goes there. He talks to the father like, hey, you don't understand. So, I have this problem. There's these people I really want to meet, but I think they're going to hate me because of how I look. Can you help me out? And the blind father's like, you know what? I can help you out. And with bad timing, the rest of the family who can see start opening the door. And then Frankenstein says, okay, you're the family. Please help me out. Bye.
Yeah.
And then the people come in, they look at him, they yell, they scream, and they attack him. And then Frankenstein, runs away. The family leaves that village forever. He never sees them again. And so then Dave, burns down that cottage.
Oh,
And, he's angry because there's no one, he doesn't like fit into any society.
yeah.
So this is me.
You're
telling the
relaying
book.
what the Arctic Adventurer relayed to his sister, who relayed to you, and now you're relaying it to me.
I guess. And we're relaying that to you.
Yeah.
So then Dave is like, you know what? I need a woman friend. That's what'll help me. And
like a girlfriend or just a lady that
a lady who's also deformed and messed up like him. So they only have each other. So he has a companion. And so he goes to Frankenstein and says, hey, you made me and you abandoned me.
Oh, this is much more like biblical now.
Yeah. So you made me, you abandoned me. I was your responsibility. Take some responsibility and like make me a woman folk. And then we'll just go off to like South America, he says, and like live off berries. We won't bother anyone ever again.
What?
Do this and I'll be out of your life forever. And so Frankenstein.
How bad does he look, by the way? Jeez.
He's like 8 feet tall, hulking, like super scary.
Okay.
But basically, Frankenstein says, okay, I'm going to make you your girl and then I'm going to go get married. We're going to be done. And then as he's, he's like halfway done, kind of making woman Frankenstein's monster. Woman Dave.
Okay.
He realizes, you know what? If I make her, they're going to have kids. And I cannot, in good conscience, release this scourge upon humanity. And so he kind of destroys everything he's working on. Dave sees everything and is enraged.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have a little yelling battle. And then Dave says, I will be there with you on your wedding night. That is his threat.
Oh.
Yeah. This doesn't seem to bother Frankenstein too much, who proceeds to then go on and get married. And then, he leaves his wife alone for a second and she's murdered.
Oh.
That happens. Frankenstein goes after Dave. And then it all kind of comes to a conclusion where Frankenstein dies on the boat with our Arctic explorer. And then Dave, Frankenstein's monster, comes in, looks over his creator and says, now I'm going to go to the North Pole and kill myself.
Really?
Yeah. And then he just jumps out of the window and goes away. And he tells that to the Arctic explorer, who tells that to his sister. The end. It's so complex.
Wow.
And it's interesting. And there's a lot of questions raised.
And that's a lot more going on than the movie.
Yeah. And that's what I mean is like in this movie, they just got a tall dude who doesn't say anything.
Yeah, he's like a real monster. He just grunts and like, yeah, I mean, one of these kind of walks. Yeah, like that's what I mean. Like after he's reanimated, it's just like, he's just a monster and everyone hates him and he kind of causes some trouble.
Yeah.
But it's not a lot going on, really.
No. And so Bela Lugosi, I think is how you say his name.
Yeah.
The person who played Dracula, he was supposed to play Frankenstein's monster, but he wanted the monster to have a lot more complexity.
Yeah.
And they said no. And so he wasn't attached to it. But
Frankenstein, the Dr. Frankenstein, seems like in the book, he seems like he's kind of like a loser or like, he seems kind of dumb. Like he studies the occult, does stuff, gets freaked. Like he knew what it looked like before he made it, right? Like,
yeah.
Why would he be so scared? Like he knew what it looked like.
It's so funny because in the book, like as soon as it comes alive, like he gives it life. He's like, yeah, man, it's great. I made him super tall. He has like perfectly white teeth. He has this jet black hair. He's going to be like the hottest guy. And then as soon as he comes alive, he's like, wait a minute. His eyes are like super yellow and look weird. And his face is all deformed. And oh God, like he realizes very quickly like, oh, never mind. This is terrible. It's like he was drunk when he first looked upon his creation. And then when he like sobered up, he was like, oh no.
Like beer goggles on.
That's basically, what happened.
Okay.
And so, the themes in the book are a lot more complex.
All right.
And I think, in the movie, it's some of it's there.
Some of it's there.
It's alive. It's alive.
Yeah. That thing, like, I know what it is to be God or something. That was cut from like because it was 1930s.
1931,
so
yeah.
They cut that from all like screenings of a movie basically for a long time.
In certain states, yeah, like Pennsylvania and stuff, and
Kansas.
Right.
I was reading that Kansas wanted to cut like, I don't know how they did censorship or ratings back then. Was it by state or something? But like,
so I think you can just kind of choose what to show. So I mean, okay, so what happened was there was a few scenes that were cut. So the one where he says, what did he say? he says, I know what it is to be God,
Yeah.
which, yeah, man, that's like the theme.
Well, that's the point.
But
Yeah.
but then they cut that line out. And then, when Frankenstein's monster tosses little girl Maria into the lake, they cut that part out.
Yeah.
When she's murdered because she can't swim, even though she lives next to a lake.
Yeah, dude.
Her
It's like
father left her alone next to a lake.
he left her alone 6 inches from water, and apparently she can't swim. And he left her like presumably for hours because he wasn't walking like next door. He was like walking to town.
Yeah.
So, whatever.
But these things were cut, and it actually wasn't until the 80s where they rediscovered like that scene of him throwing going to the lake. So we should be so fortunate to have seen the complete version. But in 1934, so there was like a code kind of introduced, which had some religious undertones. And so basically it said, the good have to be good, and you can't make bad guys look good or evil to be good in any way.
Mm-hmm.
Again, religious undertones. And so the next movie, like Bride of Frankenstein and stuff, they took away all the I know what it's like to be God stuff. That was gone. So yeah, the censoring definitely started.
Frankenstein, the monster, Dave, has no character, really. He's just like, "Rrr,
Right.
rrr." He's like an animal.
And so, I mean, the actor still has to be able to convey that.
Sure,
And he
yeah.
does, and it's fine. But it's like that, I forget what the bad guy is in James Bond, the tall dude. It's just
Odd
like,
Job or something?
yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's just, your only job is to look menacing, be menacing. And I think he conveyed that, right?
Yeah.
You said the director was talking about, the actor's face and how that.
I think that I was reading that book that the director like saw him like in the cafeteria. It was like, hey, you look like
A monster?
You look like a corpse monster. You want to be in my movie? It was said that he had like melancholic eyes, and he had like a dental bridge or something he could take out, so he had like sunken cheeks.
Oh, okay.
And like, but I mean, that's a nice way of then saying, hey, you look like a dead monster, but whatever, he got him for it.
Yeah. And I will say, I mean, I'm pretty impressed with the actual acting. Like in Metropolis, I said, oh, some of these actors have good facial expressions. But really, at the end of the day, if you memorize what you're supposed to do and just, do this, it's like, hey, you're an actor now. But here, lines were delivered well. I loved, the way that everybody spoke. They emoted well, and you understood, how they were feeling, their motivations. Which again, like I said earlier, is one of the reasons. Now it's a talkie. It's a lot more complex, at least emotionally.
Frankenstein's character design is pretty iconic.
The monster, you mean?
Yeah, Dave's characters. See what I mean? That's why everyone says it's Frankenstein.
I know. We all
'cause he
understand
has
why
no
we
name.
say it. Yeah.
Anyway,
He who has no name.
But the bolts in the neck, they're like really square, like like
The design is very, very good.
it's very iconic, and it didn't exist before the movie. Like the book doesn't have any of that. Like it describes him as like a monster man, but it doesn't have anything.
And really, he's described as a monster man in the book mainly because of his like height and stature.
Yeah,
That's mostly it. Yeah, and the other people did well as well. The character of Fritz, who is Igor in some of the later adaptations, Fritz existed.
he's a hunchback like assistant,
and he existed in the 1823 play.
Mm-hmm.
So
where did so his name is Fritz? Obviously, everyone knows him as Igor, right? Now, where did that come from?
I think it might be an American-Russian thing.
But like,
not sure.
This is an American movie, and like the weird accent. Yes, master. Like, where's that from?
I think that's from the later movies where he was played by Bela Lugosi.
No, he wasn't.
Yeah, it was.
The little assistant was played by Bela Lugosi.
I think so.
Not Frankenstein.
Correct.
Are you sure?
No. But
Okay.
we're going to edit this out if I'm wrong. Yeah, look it up. And yeah, everybody else I think acted pretty well. There was nothing, I can't fault anybody for being hokey in the acting or, oh, this isn't believable. So I think that's a huge plus because you can't say that about most films today, So like I said, the character of Frankenstein's monster is very complex in the book. And so in the movie, right, he's just some irredeemable guy who's got a bad brain,
Oh, you mean Dave?
It's so simplistic and one-dimensional, and
It's just a monster movie, They
before they existed. Yeah, this is like the
Yeah.
first
they took all the philosophical stuff, kind of like it kind of had it up until that point, and they kind of just
right. What you were saying when the movie kind of just
like Dr. Frankenstein
made
just
blah.
he's like, oh, okay, I'm gonna get married now. Lock up that goon, and then
Yeah.
he gets out and causes shenanigans, and then they burn him in a windmill. But like it had these kind of like I am God. You shouldn't be toying with this. Leading up to it, and then it kind of just goes away.
But from the very beginning, it seems like this is media for just. It's not, it's not meant to be a thinking person's, activity.
Yeah.
Even from the very beginning. And so, just rounding it out as usual. We saw it in widescreen. That was nice. The filmography, I think we've praised it.
Yeah, it's notable because it's. I mean, I don't know if it's like notable for the time,
Sure.
but like compared to the last
the
Trip to the Moon
1927
and
Metropolis and the 1902 Trip to the Moon.
Noticeably more modern camera movements, like zoom in, zoom out, close-ups, like high angle shots. Like it's all there. Noticeably more modern.
I imagine a lot of it has to do with technology. Cameras probably got smaller. Wish I knew more about that, but whatever. But they had out of focus areas, which I was surprised by. I think this film was edited really well. Like again, we didn't
seem like it was. Yeah,
we didn't feel like the pace of the movie like drag or linger. What was it that we watched the other day that felt like it took forever?
Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
Oh yeah. This film had better pacing than Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
I'll agree with that.
All right, so that's one thing I'll say. And there's some actual good scenes. I think there's like a single shot take where Maria, the little girl, and her father, like he's carrying her body, through the town. That was very well done. There's some night scenes which look great. They're very well lit. And there was like a zoom out when the master of the burrow was making a speech about going after Frankenstein, and then it zoomed out, and
I could see why it was a popular movie.
Continued. Yeah. So it did a lot of those things very well and very modern looking shots.
Yeah.
Appreciate even to this day. And the sets, they looked fine. I never felt like I was watching a play, like I was watching with them.
He really
the others.
The only part where it stuck out was at the end when he's like climbing over rocks and stuff.
It looks like a bad Star Trek set.
Kind of, yeah. But I mean, like,
And the sound, as I was saying, there's no like constant music like in Metropolis. You're allowed to breathe. Almost the opposite problem was true because there's no like background music. Like sometimes sometimes the actual scene will have music being played and the camera will work, or you record
music. Is that what that's called? I think that's it.
But otherwise it was just silent except with the talking.
Right.
It's nice to have that piece.
So did you ever put together that like talkies are talking movies, but they're called movies because they're movies?
Moving?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When did you figure that out?
Now.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
See what I mean? It's like, oh, it's a talkie. But before that, it was like, as opposed to a picture, it's like, oh, it's a movie. And now we call them movies.
Yeah. And so, okay. I don't know. We went through a lot. I feel like I've just vomited out a bunch of information I had in my head.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, so the movie was enjoyable.
It was enjoyable.
It was enjoyable. I feel like it was better. It held up better than I thought it would.
Yeah.
I learned things, but I feel like mostly what I got out of this is like the book sounds like it's a lot better,
a lot more complex,
a lot more interesting than the movie.
We still have to. We still haven't gotten to the point where, we have a complex movies that are.
You can have a complex film. It will never match. Books can always be more in depth and stuff like that. Just because you read a book over like weeks, Yeah,
and you can see inside like 2 hours. The character, there's so much more freedom with how you convey information.
Yeah,
you can see inside characters' minds, etc.
But you can also have a complex movie, and this is not a complex movie.
Yeah,
but whatever. It doesn't have to be.
It doesn't have to be. And I popularized more movies like this, which hooray.
I was thinking about like science fiction is like very hard to define exactly what it is. I mean. There's a lot of different kinds of science fiction, and I think like for me, what I like about science fiction is like a more of a like this is a vision of what the future could be, or like there's like this technology that doesn't exist now, but like what would it be like if that was the case?
Yeah, this does fall into that.
It does, but I feel like for this
the movie doesn't. I guess
the movie doesn't.
Right.
Yeah, but. Right. What I would be more interested or going after is like, what if he made this technology and then it became widespread? What would that world be like? I think that's more of the science fiction that I'm like.
I suppose. I think what question this would open up is sort of androids. And so android rights and those sorts of things, which are explored in like Star Trek, Matrix.
Yeah.
So those questions the beginnings of those questions are sort of asked in this book. Like, you created me, now fulfill your responsibility as my creator.
Mm. It is. I mean, it's definitely science fiction, but the setting is things are predominantly like old Europe, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When will we get to, I don't know, metal and like sleek?
Yeah, I don't know.
Sci-fi.
1950s probably.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, anything else?
In 2017, they were going to make a reboot with Javier Bardem.
They were going to?
Alex Kurtzman was. And then The Mummy flopped.
Oh, right.
With
the Universal Studios thing.
Yeah. Was it called The Dark Universe? Yeah, nowadays we look at, Frankenstein is monster, and it just seems hokey.
Yeah.
It's just so basic.
Yeah, it's kind of goofy. It's kind of corny.
I think part of the reason, unfortunately, is because it just exists as like a very we think of like the Joker or Thanos, modern day more villains, and people really enjoy them because they're complex and they have depth, and people's initial exposure to Frankenstein is when they're kids, and it's just a normal little monster movie, and so it's very vague and it doesn't have the same.
The character design does not hold up. Like, it looks goofy now. Like, if you put that directly into like a scary movie now, I'd be like,
yeah, partly because it's just so. Because you see it when you're like 4 years old, and it's like and then you grow up, and it's like that's not scary.
Yeah, Frankenstein is like so.
Maybe if you took the same concept of he looks the Borg maybe from Star Trek are kind of what that would look like more further.
Right. What is that cereal called? It's probably like Halloween themed Lucky Charms with like little Frankenstein heads in it. You know what I mean? Like, it's just so like
it's like the Count or Count Chocula. He belongs in that realm.
Yeah, like it's been so I don't know, overused.
All right,
well, I think we're done. Probably.
Yeah, I think so.
It's gone off the rails.
I just realized that this shirt is not gonna do well. It's okay. I'll be okay. I'll survive.